Hi everyone, welcome to week 8. This next project that we're working on is on comparative analysis, and hopefully you've taken a look already at, there we go, at what we're going to be studying for this final project. It's on the topic of identity. Let's go to the lecture. Oops. So hopefully you've read through this lecture a little bit already. It's fairly easy. You're just going to have to start your work on Essay 3 by completing Skill Set 8 and taking Quiz 9. Quiz 8 basically takes you through the steps of, Skill Set 8 takes you through the steps of starting your essay, and the next video will be on how to do that. This video is going to be on what is comparative analysis. All term we've talked about analysis, right? It's the breaking down of a whole into its parts in order to understand how the whole works. And if you think of it in terms of like a car or some sort of engine or machine, you don't have to look at every single part. You might want to look at just the belts in the car or just the pistons. And for an analysis, you don't necessarily have to look at the entirety of the components. Otherwise, your essay would be too long and that would be too much work. So you can choose what you want to narrow in on. You can look at major themes in something, a document probably that you're going to be analyzing. You could look at characters, arguments that you notice, puzzles, questions that come up, any patterns. And that's the key. You want to look for patterns when you're trying to analyze something. Looking at these things explains to the reader why they are important, and that's what analysis is really doing. It's showing significance. It's basically looking for the meaning, just kind of like we do in life, sometimes passively, sometimes actively, but we're looking for significance in the thing that we're analyzing. Comparative analysis does the same thing, but with more than one subject. So usually in school, you're doing a comparative analysis or an analysis on a text or literature or something like that. For this assignment, in this class, you can look at just about anything. You could look at a movie, a radio show, a play. You can look at 2 other subjects like a song. You could look at photographs. And it doesn't all have to be in the arts. You could look at how maybe two different rival teams at university teams compare using identity. And that's the topic, is identity. So you have to compare these 2 things somehow through the lens of identity. We'll get to that in the next video. Usually when you compare 2 things, they have some sort of binding theme. You can compare 3 different kinds of apples, like Fuji, Honeycrisp, and Rayburn. They're all apples, but they have different qualities. Or you could compare mangoes, bananas, and ugly fruit. Those are 3 different tropical fruits, so that's what they have in common. You could even compare bananas, lemon custard, and egg yolks, and what you would compare, or their binding theme would be that they're all yellow. So you're starting to get the idea, I hope. If you want to take a look at a sample essay, there's one by Tony Macklin where he compares, I think, 4 different films through the lens of identity. And we'll also take a look at this guy's photography. So just a quick note, know that you can right-click or control-click on any of these links. They're all live, and they'll open up, hopefully, in a new tab. That's what I've done here. Let's take a look at this guy's photography. So the first photograph kind of gives it away. Let me make this a little bit bigger. And he goes through and explains his process of analysis, and you can take the time to read through that if you're interested, or you could just skim it. But for now, we're basically looking for patterns. And he showed us the first pattern already, right? He kind of showed us the triangle shape between the three. So whenever you have three subjects, you can probably use triangle shapes. But in photography, composition is really big. Photographers look for composition. They look for how things are composed within the frame of their photograph. So basically, we're looking for patterns. Do you see any other patterns of triangles? So for instance, he showed us the first one. I see these ones in their arms, right? So there's one, there's kind of another invisible triangle there. And since their arms are all in the same shape, there are so many triangles I start to see between their arms. Once I see those triangles, I see these triangles up here, right? Because their arms are making a W. So far I've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 triangles total. And now I'm just seeing triangles everywhere. I see them in their rib cages, right? Here. I see it in their stance. So this is literally a triangle right down here, here, and also just in their whole bodies. There's the top of their head, and then their legs splay out like a triangle. Do you guys see triangles anywhere else in the photograph that don't have to do with these three boys? So maybe up at the top, here's a woman up here with 3 children, and it kind of makes a triangle. Sometimes students point out right here, the crossbar and the fence to support it makes a triangle. I definitely see this up here as a triangle. So once you start looking for a pattern and you notice a few recurrences, you see that pattern recur over and over. It becomes easier and easier to see the pattern. So you just have to start the process. It's just like conversation, right? It's sometimes hard to get a conversation going, but once you do, it sort of snowballs and it becomes a real conversation. It's the same thing with analysis. So let's see what he found. Yep, there's the first one. He showed us that already. There are those rib cages. There are the arms. And then he goes on to talk about these patterns and how he analyzes them, how they make up the photograph. So how the triangles are components that make up the whole of the composition. And there's analysis. Here's another example. So what patterns do you see here? Well, since I've just started looking at threes, I definitely see this triangle, right, between the top and then the 2 bottom ones. I see a triangle there. What other shapes do you see? So I do see a pattern of shapes. There's the triangle, there's the circle, there's the square. Does the square recur? Or rather, the rectangle? It kind of happens 3 times, right? There's the outer one, there's this inner white one, and then there's this inner one. And once you start to see things recur, it kind of snowballs, and you see more and more. I also see a pattern of faces, right? 3 faces. And the noses are somewhat prominent, or at least I noticed them. This nose partially in shadow, and this nose here. I also start to notice the framing, right? These corners are in shadow, and it creates a kind of shape too. I'm not sure what shape you see, but I see kind of a rectangle in that shape. He goes on to explain his analysis. So feel free to read through that or just skim through it just to see what other people notice or what he notices in his own photographs. And this is a really great one. This has a lot of shapes in it, so just take a look. What do you notice first? Well, there's the framing, and photographers will tell you that framing their photography is everything. Framing their subjects is everything. Lots of legs, right? So lots of verticals, not so many horizontals. So I see that recurring as a pattern. Tons of verticals. There are these legs over here, stool, this kind of contour in the wall back here in the window. it makes a kind of rectangle shape, and then I see these rectangle shapes here. I see the rectangle of the doorway that he's got them framed in. Let's see. Yep, there's that one. Very important to photographers. He says they're perfectly in a triangular form, so I didn't even pick up on that. I was looking for something else. There are all those legs, those vertical lines. And that's all. Okay, so really quick, let's see. This essay asks you to analyze. I'll put this document up for you in week 8. It's about analysis, and it just talks about several different kinds of analysis, things that you can focus on. Uh-oh, there we go. A few methods of analysis, so finding and collecting documents, specifying criteria or patterns you are looking for, so you have to be specific about them. Analyzing documents for patterns, noting number of occurrences and other factors, so we've done that in the photographs so far. It talks a little bit about how to introduce your subject, right? You need to let the reader know that you're performing an analysis. You have to tell them what documents are under consideration. So just like in your quizzes, you have to let me know who you've read and who it's by, or what you've read and who it's by. You need to give a quick summary, so hopefully all of you guys are practiced at that by now. And give a basic rundown of the situation surrounding the document. So there might need to be some context in whatever you choose. Maybe you don't know yet what you're doing, so you're not quite sure. There are a few sample thesis statements here, and they're not all for comparative analysis, but they are for analysis. I think this last one will be the most useful to you. Analysis can also easily lead to making original arguments. Performing the analysis may lead you to an argument, or vice versa, you may start with an argument and search for proof that supports it. So you'll definitely have to posit a kind of claim. You'll have to say what you're analyzing and claim that, look, these are patterns that I see, and this is what I conclude from these patterns. Hopefully you're practiced at doing that as well, drawing conclusions from the analysis that you're making. So let's take a look at this. A close analysis of the female body images in the July 2007 issue of Cosmopolitan magazine reveals contradictions between the article's calls for self-esteem and the advertisement's unrealistic beauty demands. I can assume that this person is going to be comparing the articles and the photographs. So multiple subjects, right? And that the patterns they see show a contradiction, right? So the articles are showing that, or commanding that you can build your self-esteem in these particular ways, but that the advertisements or the photographs in the advertisements show that there's only one way to do that. So they would have to go on to make that argument to support it in their analysis, right? Does that make sense? This document goes on to talk about order, chronological, spatial, point by point, persuasive appeals, and it talks a little bit about a conclusion, and we'll get there. But stay tuned for the next video, which is going to talk specifically about your Skill Set 8, and thank you so much for watching.